Authentication and authorization is the most important features for any app that needs to support multiple users. Most novice developers are confused with authentication and authorizations. Authentications is a process to identify who is the user, while authorizations is the process to determine what the user can perform in the apps. In other words, the user roles. Before the authorization process can take place, the app needs to perform authentication to identify who is the user first. In this tutorial, I will show you how easy we can add the authentication process into our apps with Firebase. Welcome to Just Code channel. Let's learn to code easily and quickly with me. Your likes, favorites, sharing, and subscription to this video are my biggest motivations for creating more videos. If you have any question in this tutorial, please leave a comment below. All our tutorial video is available in both English and Mandarin. Today's tutorial, we will continue to modify the dictionary app we have created in the past tutorial to illustrate how to add Firebase authentication into our apps. First, we need to know how Firebase authentication works. Firebase is an authentication as a service provider, AaaS. It enables organizations to easily apply multi-factor authentication to secure access to any applications from any device, anywhere. Firebase Authentication provides a variety of sign-in methods ranging from normal email and password sign-in and social network account sign-in like Google and Facebook social network. In this tutorial, I will show you how to add Firebase authentications that support normal email and password sign-in. I will show you the Google social account sign-in in the next tutorial. Before we start making changes, I assume you have watched our tutorial 5 and 8 on how to set up Firebase project via the Firebase console and install the RN Firebase React Native npm modules. Let's bring up the terminal screen. Make sure you are in the Just Code DICT project folder. The module required are the React Native Firebase app and React Native Firebase Auth module. However, we have installed React Native Firebase app module in tutorial 8. Therefore, we only need to install the React Native Firebase Auth modules. Once the modules are installed, we need to issue the port update Firebase call only command in the iOS folder. The reason is we had installed Firebase call only in the previous tutorial, and there is a version update when we making this video. If you are creating new project, then you just need to issue the port install command instead of the update command. Before we start coding, let's define the changes we're going to make in this app. We are going to create a login page that allows the user to perform authentications or set up new account. Within the app, we will check if the user has logins or not when he or she is going to add the word into the flavored list or view the flavored word list. If the user is not yet logged in, then we will redirect the user to the login page. In the profile page, we will add a button for the user to perform a logout. Before we can use the normal email and password sign-in method from Firebase, we must enable it in the Firebase console. Bring out the Firebase console. Click on the Just Code DICT project. On the left menu items, click on the Authentications. Click on the Sign-in Method tab and click on the Email Password item. Toggle the Enable control and click on the Save button. That's all we need to perform in the Firebase console for now. Bring out the VS Code again. We need to create a new state to hold the user login section in the Redux state. We also need to modify the page action and reducer to add in the necessary actions and reducers for the login page. If you are not familiar with React Redux, please watch our tutorial 7 for more information. Open the action-tabs.js in the source Redux action folder. We will define the section set authenticated action tabs under the section at the end of the file as shown. Next, we create a section action.js file in the same folder. In it, we define the set authenticated method that takes in the authenticated user object and return the action and payload. Then, we create a new file called sectionreducer.js under the source Redux reducer folder. In it, we define the initial state for the section. Next, we will define the main reducer methods and export it. Followed by, we will create a method that handles the section set authenticated actions as shown. The authenticated state will depend on the payload, which is the user object. The user state will hold the user object. The authenticated on state will hold the date and time when the reducer is fired if the user had logged on. Else, it will contain a null. Open the index.js under the reducers folder. We will import the section reducer we have just created and add it to the combined reducer as shown. Open the action-tab.js file again. Now, we are going to add the action tabs required by the login page. The action tab page login set email, page login set password, and page login set error are for setting input field and error message for the login form. The page login out pending, fulfill, and reject are for performing authentications via Firebase. The page login signup action tabs are for performing account signups. The page login logout action tabs are for performing logout action. The page login forget password action tabs are for triggering password reset email via Firebase. Next, open the page action.js under the source Redux action folder. We first import the React Native Firebase Auth module. The first action we need to add is the page login set email action methods. It takes in the email parameter and return the action tab with email in the payload. Next, we add the page login set password and login page set error similarly as shown. The next action method we're going to add is the page login out. It will take in the email, password, localized string, and the callback methods as parameters. In it, we will return a method that performs the authentications with Firebase. In the return method, we first dispatch the page login out pending action. Then, we invoke the sign with email and password method from the Auth module, which take in the email and password as parameter. If the authentication is successful, it will dispatch the page login out fulfill action and perform a callback. On the other hand, if the authentication failed, then it will dispatch the page login out rejected action and perform the callback with the error object. The rest of the action methods we are going to create will have similar structures as page login out method. Next is the page login signup action method that takes in the email, password, localized string, and a callback method as parameters. It first dispatch the page login signup pending action, and then invoke the create user with email and password method to perform a user account signup via Firebase. If the signup is successful, it will dispatch the page login signup fulfill actions and perform a callback. If the signup failed, then it will determine the error types and dispatch the page login signup rejected action with the corresponding error message in the payload. It will also perform a callback with the error object. The next action method is the page login logout methods, which only take in the callback parameters. It first dispatches the page login logout pending action, then it will invoke the signout from the Auth module to perform a user signout. If signout is successful, it will dispatch the page login logout fulfill action and perform a callback. However, if the signout fails, it will dispatch the page login logout rejected action and perform a callback with the error object. The last action method is the page login forget password method, which taking the email and callback as the parameters. It first dispatches the page login forget password pending action, then it will invoke the send password reset email from the Auth module to request the Firebase to send the forget password email to the user. If the request is successful, it will dispatch the page login forget password fulfill action and perform a callback. However, if the request fails, it will dispatch the page login forget password rejected action and perform a callback with the error object. Now, let us open the pagereducer.js file in the source Redux reducer folder. We will add in a new state for the login page in the initial state method as shown. The login state will hold the email, password, error message, loading, and load state. Scroll to the end of the file and we will add in the page login set email reducer methods to update the email in the login state. Next, we will add in the similar reducer methods for page login set password and page login set error reducers to update the password and error message state respectively. Next, we will add in the pending, fulfill, rejected reducer methods for page login out action as shown. The pending method will set the error message to empty, loading to true, and load to false. The fulfill method will set the error message to empty, loading to false, and load to true. The rejected method will set the error message to the payload, loading to false, and load to false to indicate an error. We will proceed to add all pending, fulfill, and rejected reducer methods for page login signup, page login logout, and page login forget password action as shown. Now, we will proceed to create the login page for the app. We create a login folder under the screens folders. We will create the locale.json and index.js file. In the locale.json file, we will define all the text required by the login screen. I will not go into details on this file. In the login index.js file, we first import all the required modules. Next, we create a login class component. In the component, we define the onEmailChange method to update the email field to the Redux state when the user tapping on the login form. Next, we define a similar method on password change to handle the password update to the Redux state. The next method is verified login form that perform verification on the login form. It first gets the email and password from the Redux state, then it will check if the user has specified the email and is in the correct format. Followed by, it will check the password to ensure the user had keyed in the password and the password has fulfilled the minimum requirements. Next, we define the onLogin methods to perform the authentication process. It first invokes the verified login form method to verify the login form. Then, it will get the email and password from the Redux state. If the form verification valid, it will dispatch the page login out actions to proceed with the authentication process. If the form verification fails, it will dispatch the page login set error action to display the error message to the user. Next is the onSignup method. It is similarly to the onLogin method, just that we dispatch the page login signup action to perform a user signup instead of login. The next method we're going to create is the verified forget password form. It is similar to the verified login form methods. However, in the verified forget password form method, we only verify the email field. Followed by is the forget password method. This method will dispatch the page login forgets password action to request Firebase to send an email that contains a link for the user to reset their password in the situation where the user forgets their password. When the request is successful, we will display a message to the end user saying that the forget password email is sent to a specified email address. The last method we're going to create is the render method. We will render the header, logo, email, and password field. We will assign the onEmailChange method to handle the onChange text event for the email text input and get the text input value from the Redux state login email state. Next, we assign the onPasswordChange method to handle the onChange text event for the password text inputs and get the text input value from the Redux login password state. Then, we create a text label for the error message and get its value from the Redux login error message state. Next, we define two buttons for the logins and signup action. In the login buttons, we assign the onLogin methods to the onPress event. In the signup buttons, we assign the onSignup method to the onPress event. At the end of the form, we will create a touchable opacity element for the forget password link. We will assign the forget password method to the onPress event. At the end of the login class component, we need to connect it to the Redux state and export it as shown. We have completed the login page. Now, let us open the app.js file. We first import the login page we have just created. Then, we import the session actions, Firebase Authentications, and create Stack Navigators modules. We need the create Stack Navigator modules because we need to create a Stack Navigator to add the login page into the app navigation. Then, we define the Stack Navigator and FCM Auth unsubscribe variable. In the app component.mount methods, we define the onAuth state change listener to handle the Firebase authentication state change whenever a user performs a login or logout. In the listener, we will dispatch the set authenticated action to update the user info to the Redux state. This listener will receive the user object if the user had logged in. If the user performs a logout, then the listener will receive a null as the user object. With this user object, the section reducer will update its state accordingly as discussed earlier on. The onAuth state change listener will return an unsubscribe method so that the app can unsubscribe the listener when the app quits. Scroll to the component.amount methods. We will invoke the FCM Auth unsubscribe method if it is defined. This will unsubscribe the listener when the app quits. Scroll to the render methods. We will define the stack navigator elements and encapsulate the drawer nav into the stack screen elements. We will also add in another stack screen elements to hold the login page. This is to add the login page into the app navigation. We have done for the app.js file. Let's open the index.js under the source screen search folder. Scroll to the Redux connect method. We need to add in the section state so that the search page can pass the section state to the word definition components. Scroll up to the render method and locate the word definition elements. We will add in the section property to the word definition elements as shown. Now, let us open the index.js under the source component word def folder. We first import the use navigation hook so that we can navigate the user to the login page if he or she not yet logged into the app. We will add in the session props in the word definition functional components. We then invoke the use navigation hook to get the navigation object. Scroll now to the touchable opacity element that holds this favorite icon. We will modify the existing onPress event to navigate the user to the login page if he or she is not logged in yet. If the user has logged in, then the existing logic should remain. Scroll to the word definition prop tabs and add in the session props as shown. We will also set the default value for the section props as shown. Next, we need to modify the index.js under the source screen favorite folders. Scroll to the Redux connect method and add in the session state as shown. Now, scroll up back to the component debound methods. We will add in the logic to check if the user has logged in or not. If logged in, we will proceed to load the favorite word list. Else, we will navigate the user to the login page. Scroll now to the component update methods. We will modify the logic to invoke the load favorite list method if only the user has logged in. Scroll to the render methods. We will add in the login buttons after the app icon that will display if the user is not logged in. When the user clicks on the button, it will navigate the user to the login page. We will also modify the swipe list view to display only when the user has logged in and the favorite word list is loaded. That's all for the favorite word list page. The last file we need to modify is the index.js under the source screen profile folder. We first import the page actions module. Scroll to the Redux connect methods and add in the session state as shown. Scroll up to the render method. We will get the user login status and assign it to the isAuthenticated variable. Scroll now to the scroll view closing tag. We will add in a button to allow the user to perform a login and logout. The title of the button will depend on the user login status. In the onPress event, we will dispatch the page login logout action if the user is logged in. If the user is not logged in yet, then we will navigate the user to the login page. That's all for the profile page. We have completed all the changes for the Firebase email and password authentication demo. Let's save all the changes, compile, and run the apps in the simulator. The app has launched in the simulator. Let's perform a word search. Now, click on the heart icon to favorite the words. you will see the app display the login page instead of adding the word to the favorite list. This is because the user has not logged in yet. In the login form, we will see the email and password fields. We also have the login and sign up buttons and the forget password link. Click on the back button to cancel the login. Now, let's tap on the favorite tab, and as expected, the app navigates the user to the login form again. Without keying any field, let's click on the login button and you will see the error message. Key in a valid email address and a strong password. Before we click on the login button, let's place some breakpoint in the app.js, loginindex.js, sectionreducer.js, and pageaction.js files. Now, let us click on the login button and the onLogin method will be fired. It will first verify the login form and get the email and password from the Redux state. If the login form is valid, it will dispatch the page login out action. In the page login out action method, it will first dispatch the page login out pending action. Then, it will invoke the sign in with email and password method from Firebase to perform a sign in. However, we will get an error message as the user account is not available yet. The app will display the error by dispatch the page login out rejected action with the error message. Next, let's click on the sign up button to perform the account sign up. The onSignup method will be fired. It will first verify the login form and get the email and password from the Redux state. If the login form is valid, it will dispatch the page login signup action. In the page login signup action method, it will first dispatch the page login signup pending action. Then, it will invoke the create user with email and password method from Firebase to perform user account signup. Once the signup completed, the on-out state change listener will be fired. In the listener, we will receive the user object from Firebase. With this user object, we can identify who is the user. In the next tutorial, I will show you how to perform data synchronization across multiple devices with the help of this user object and Firebase Cloud Storage. For now, we will dispatch the setAuthenticated action to update the app Redux state with the user object. In the session setAuthenticated reducer, we will check the user object in the action payload is valid or not. If valid, then it will set the authenticated state to true, user state to the user object, and authenticated on state to the current time. Now, the app will return to the page login signup action. It will continue to dispatch the page login signup fulfill action to indicate the signup is successful. The app will dismiss the login page and proceed to load the flavored word list. Let's go back to the search page and click on the heart icon again. Now, the app allows us to flavor the word as the user has signed up and logged in successfully. Let's take a look at the session Redux state from the console. We will see the authenticated state is true, user state contains the user object, the authenticated on contains the date and time when the user had logged in. Now, let's navigate to the My Profile page. We will see the logout buttons and click on it. This will fire the page login logout action. It first will dispatch the page login logout pending action. Then, it will invoke the signup method from Firebase. Once the signup is successful, it will dispatch the page login logout fulfill action as shown. Then, the on-out state change listener will be triggered again. However, the user object will be null as the user had signed out. The app will continue to dispatch the set authenticated action with the null user object. In the section set authenticated reducer, the isAuthenticated variable will be false as the user object is null. The user and authenticated on state will also be set to null. Let's verify the state in the console log. Let's switch back to the home page in the simulator and click on the favorite tab again. You will see the favorite page will hide the user favorite word list and show a login button. Click on the login button. Now, let's click on the forget password link. The forget password method will be fired. It will first verify the form by invoking the verified forget password form method. It then gets the email from the Redux state. If the form is valid, it will dispatch the page login forget password action. In the page login forget password action methods, it will first dispatch the page login forget password pending action and then invoke the send password reset email method from Firebase to request the forget password email to be sent. If the request is successful, it will dispatch the page login forget password fulfill action. Let's remove all the breakpoints and perform login again. Once login, the login page will be dismissed and the app will reload the favorite word list as per normal. We have completed the Firebase email and password login features. Isn't it simple to implement? Furthermore, with Firebase Authentication, you don't need to set up your own server to perform authentication. We have come to the end of this tutorial. Today, I have shown you how to add user authentication to the apps. I have demonstrated using the normal email and password authentication to perform the sign-in. Stay tuned for our next tutorial video as I will show you how to perform authentication using the Google Social Network account. If you have any question regarding this tutorial or any topic related to mobile app development you wish to know, please leave a comment below. You can follow the links to get the source code for this tutorial on our GitHub page. Your likes, favorite, sharing, and subscription are my biggest motivation to create more videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.